Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is the off season. We are up here in the loft. It is a dreary, cold, ugly February 29th. How about that? We get an extra day in February.
Yeah, it's a Leap Pod.
It's a Leap Pod, the Leap Pod. And so we're going to be talking about some off-season stuff that has been of interest. I'm Steve.
I'm Connor.
Lucas. Jay.
So, guys, the over-under came out for OU in their debut season in the SEC, and it was a shocking 7-5. I say it's shocking because I think it really struck a lot of people as fairly shocking. We had a poll about it. What do you guys think about that? My question is, what is the market pricing in to justify 7-5? What does it take to make 7-5 a good over/under number for the regular season win losses? You guys believers in it? You
Sounds legit to me.
sounds
Tough
legit
schedule.
to you. Tough schedule, you say? Okay.
Yep. I would have put it closer to 8.5, maybe like 8.43 or something like that. No, I think I would have put it a full win higher in my opinion. I think a lot of the hype around what some of these other programs did postseason and the portal between Missouri and Ole Miss, and then somehow Dylan Gabriel's exit is a catastrophic loss, and the Jackson Arnold stepping in is a massive hurdle to overcome, at least from a national narrative perspective, which obviously we've talked about it. There's going to be some growing pains, but I would say from what we retained on the defensive side of the ball and some of the core skill positions that we maintained some players at, I would think 8.5 would be closer to what I thought. So again, maybe homerism coming out there, but that's where I would have put the line.
What'd you think, Jay?
I don't think it's terrible. I can see where Connor's going with this. What I don't like about it, and this is hedging some, man, if it does come to fruition that it is a 7-5 season, there's going to be so many people that are going to be on that side of it that were like, oh, I knew there was a perfect line from Vegas, and OU's not any good. And I think the margin's really small. I mean, I think the difference between 7 and 10 wins is very, very small. So I honestly don't know which way to lean. Completely honest.
It's probably the same thing with a lot of SEC teams, though, right? Like an Ole Miss last year. Like they won 10 games last year, right? Or 9?
Yeah, 10.
10. So I mean, that's regardless, 9 or 10 for Ole Miss in the SEC is a good marker. And I think our margin is as big as theirs. Like I probably look at them top to bottom last year in the games they played in, and they were X amount of points away from a 6 or 7 win season and ended up with 10 wins.
I mean, was theirs 9.5
this year?
Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
I think it's 9.5.
I'll take the under on that.
Yeah, that's.
But I mean, to think about, they haven't necessarily lost a whole bunch, right? I mean, they lost Nick Saban.
They've lost a lot. They've lost a lot of people.
But personnel wise, it's still Alabama. They still have probably the most talented roster still in college football. And so for them to only have a 9.5 over-under, that's pretty low.
I don't think that it is low, but I don't think that's really true. I think a lot.
They may have a top 10 roster,
right?
5 or 10. I mean, Georgia
and Bama have
Ohio State,
Texas.
Texas. I mean, I think.
I bet they're not even close composite-wise. I bet Bama's still number 1 or 2.
Well, I don't know. We can look. I ran those numbers, and they weren't that high, and that was before the exodus. We'll have to look at PFF
but they've never been under 2.
Yeah, but they had a huge exodus of people. So not just the graduation. Even though they had a very good recruiting class, they've had an exodus of experienced people that have left the program. Like it was a significant number. I can't remember. We mentioned it on the pod last time. So I don't know. I think Alabama looks to be a lot weaker than what they've been. Now, they're still going to be probably extremely good. We did a poll, and the audience said that we gave them 4 choices. 5% said that the over-under should have been less than 7.5. 23% agreed with 7.5, 32% said Connors 8.5, and the plurality, 40% said greater than 8.5. Now there's some homer bias going on. Maybe. I can't remember how I answered this actually, but as you look at that schedule, what is so terrifying about that schedule? What can be priced in to make it seem like we're for sure not able to get the requisite 8 or 9 wins to get to this point? I mean, Auburn was an average football team last year. Tennessee was not great. South Carolina, not great. So, and they've lost.
They lost a core. I mean, if South Carolina has Davis Bevel taking snaps, back there next year, I mean.
So I look at it like, are they assuming we're just granted going to have a bad offensive line? Which the internal scoop is that they don't feel like we've got a bad offensive line. What other position group is suffering? What other position group is not going to be as good or better than what we saw last year? Are they banking on Jackson Arnold having a really struggling bad first year?
Well, I mean, that is completely up in the air.
I mean, nationally, if they watched the Arizona game, they could come away saying, "Oh, this guy had 4 interceptions and a fumble." Like,
he also lit it up down the field and had no offensive line.
I mean, I think we all know how we.
I was there, I recall, but I'm saying nationally, they just picked and choose and looked at stats.
So it's a bad number.
I mean,
well, and I think a lot of it plays into the fact that we are coming into a conference with a team that just made the college football playoff as well, and it's very easy to weigh those two things.
Not on the schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Not Texas. Yeah, Texas. I'm sorry, Texas. What I'm saying, but you measure those two things up against each other, right?
Right.
And you have a team that lost to Arizona and Oklahoma, and then you have a team that was a play away from going to the national title game, and who is retaining a quarterback and all these things. And it's like, well, obviously Texas is the one we're going to take, and Oklahoma is going to be at the massive disadvantage. And I think it kind of extends that message that not only is Oklahoma going to be the lesser of the two teams coming in, but we're also going to give them less wins in that category as well. So,
I mean, to me, it looks like they have to be assuming we're going to regress, where we certainly made a leap from year 1 to year 2, like a big leap. And, I mean, we were pissed because that leap wasn't in just a few points and a few plays short of being a leap getting us into the playoffs. Definitely getting us into the championship.
At least in the conference championship game.
And against a team we beat already. So are we going to regress, or is everyone else in the SEC going to get better and we're going to stagnate? I don't see why that would necessarily be the case. So to me, it doesn't seem like a very fair number. It looks like they are looking at things like the Arizona game. They're looking at the fact that you lose your quarterback and not giving us any credit for replacing that quarterback with someone who is definitely more talented, maybe not experienced talented yet, but by game 4 or 5, is he not going to be just as good as where we left off last year? All in all, I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic that we will be.
I mean, you can look in the same lens of what this very way too early line is in the Red River rivalry game as well. They got OU as 10.5 point dogs to open. I mean, I think that speaks as loudly as anything as to what they think Texas is going to be and what they think Oklahoma is going to be.
And they're not paying attention, I think, to what Texas lost. I mean, Texas has lost a lot. What they retain is not their core strength necessarily either. So
they lost, besides Ewers, they lost every starting skill position player on offense.
They lost their best defensive lineman.
Defensive tackles.
Yeah, their best 2 defensive linemen.
And a couple other spots.
And retained what
on defense,
I'm going to call just an above average quarterback.
Yeah.
With a really low ceiling. And so I don't know. I don't see it. We'll see. It'll be something that'll be interesting as it develops through the season. It'll be interesting to put some money on it. I'm definitely going to put some money on the over on that. I like it.
I do too.
So we'll get, obviously, when we get into August and the over-unders come out for everybody, and we'll be talking about all that. It'll be interesting to see if it moves between now and then as things materialize, as that season and stuff fades, and then we get into the hype of the upcoming season. I imagine that it'll move more towards an 8-win type of situation, but we'll see. So let's transition to the news of really the off season, which has been the playoff structure and how it's changed and trying to solidify into this 12-team structure for at least a couple of years. So I did a poll, and the question was, will the 12-team playoff structure be good, bad, or neutral for OU? What did you guys say? Do you remember what you answered, how you answered that one?
I think I put good just because,
More
just got more opportunity.
Yeah.
I said good as well, and for the same reason. I mean, if you start taking a look at some of these teams who have made the playoffs in the past few years, and the one or two games that OU always seems to have or fall short, the fact that we could still have an opportunity in the SEC to get in those situations is a good thing.
Well, I think the way the schedule
Two ways to look at it.
The way the schedule is this year, for as tough as it is, or at least it appears to be, and everyone's going to perceive it to be preseason, which holds a lot of weight, whether or not it really comes to fruition throughout the year.
Yep.
The perception early on is sticks with people.
Well, it's SEC bias.
And
sure.
a 9-3 can legitimately get you into the playoffs with our schedule.
It actually might be hard not to make the playoffs at 9-3.
With our schedule.
Yeah, with our.
I think other 9-3 SEC teams might not make it.
Correct.
But I think with what we have,
right,
a 9-3 would make it.
I mean, you can look at it in two ways. Yes, you'll have more opportunity, and it will be easier, quote unquote, to get into the 12-team playoff because there's more teams. But then it'll be harder to win it all.
Right.
So you gotta balance that on, the old way of 4. You only had to win the 2 games to win it in the whole thing.
Right.
Now, if you don't get a bye, you're looking at 4 games to win it all. Mm-hmm. That's a heck of a lot tougher in the overall, especially with the team that you would face. Where, this year, if we say we got in this year over Washington, let's say, well, Texas was a fluky type team to make it, in my opinion. Georgia got left out, which they could have very easily got in, and then you had Michigan and
I think it's
Alabama.
And Bama backdoored it. Bama backdoored it, and Texas backdoored it, in my opinion. But a year like this year if OU would have had one of their classic teams, would have had a very good chance of winning the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Whereas you get one of those teams in a 12-team playoff, and it's just that much harder because the cream rises to the top.
Well, the 12-team playoff would have included Georgia, among others. It would have included Ohio State. It would have included a lot of teams we know are very talented.
Ole Miss, Missouri.
Well, it's one of those things, too, where a lot of these teams, too, where obviously you're playing for a conference championship and you're wanting to win that and have that prestige. But if you're a 2-loss team that doesn't get into a conference championship behind a 1-loss team, like a 2-loss Oklahoma that doesn't get in behind a 1-loss Texas to a conference championship, you're like, man, I'm more than likely going to make the playoff and I get an extra week off. I don't have to play an extra game before I get there. Yeah, your seed is not going to be as good or anything else, but you don't have to go through that grind as well. It's going to be really interesting.
That's why the information or the news today was they're trying to make that so important so that you're rewarded if you win your conference championship.
Right. And I think that was the intent. That's the only thing I'll say to justify the idea that the byes go to the conference champions. I'll come back to that in just a second. I don't like that in general, but I do understand it from the standpoint of strengthening and encouraging conference title games to continue to occur. I answered the poll that I thought it was good, but if I had a chance to offer more context to it, I would have said good for now, neutral in the long run. It should be neutral in the long run, if not bad.
You hope it's
for the reasons that Lucas says. We hope to be back to being a premier team that's always there at the top 4. Therefore, we don't want 12 teams to be in there probably.
Yep.
The only advantage that might bring is if you get the bye and things work your way. If there are some upsets, maybe you have an easier path just because of how it kind of plays out.
12 beats 5 or something like that.
Right, something crazy.
Yeah.
But you can't count on that. So by and large, Oklahoma should expect to be in a position going forward at some point where that is actually a negative for them. How many times did we need or would we have wanted this deep of a playoff? Well, I think almost never. Never were we in the 10th spot, 12th spot, 8th, 9th spot, and we thought we deserved a shot for the national title. So it probably in the long run's bad for in the immediate next couple of years. It's probably good. So let's talk about though the bye game situation as it is right now. So it is a 5-7 format where there's 5 guaranteed spots for the top 5 conference champions, highest ranked conference champions. What I don't like about that is, and I bet you could go back and find years where it actually played out this way, there would be some, at least in that 5th spot, some pretty bad conference champions getting a bye. Not a top 5 team by any means, or a top 4 team, I should say, because there's only 4 that gets a bye. Yeah, and they might not be a top 4. They might have only been the 5th team. But getting the automatic bid is bad if you're a 12th team, and that could happen. Getting a bye if you're the 7th team, that's pretty bad for the teams that are above you that aren't going to get a bye. I mean, in that world, a 4th-ranked team is not going to get a bye, and that's pretty bad. But I do get it from the standpoint of it strengthens conference championships and encourages teams to... Because if you're sitting there, if you're 12-0, let's say you're 12-0 Georgia, and you're looking at the conference championship, and you're saying, well, wait a second, why do I bother playing it? We're in the... Why would I risk anything? And so you might just put out a bunch of second stringers to play that game. But if you can play for a bye game, by all means, you're going to give it your all to get that bye game, because that's going to be hugely important. I don't care who you're playing. You want to avoid that game if you can. Yep. So I get it from that standpoint. I don't like the home field advantage setup, though, from the same standpoint. That really bugs me, because I could see you're a team that gets a bye and you get an upset. And so let's see, the let's assume 1 through 4 get byes. And then 5, 6, 7, 8 are going to play the next 4. Well, what if the 5th team, who I presume is playing the 12th team, what if the 12th team wins? And then the number 1 team, I guess, plays the 12th team, and they have to go play them wherever. They don't.
But the venue's already set.
And the venue's already set. Yeah. They don't get a home field. If they play the 5th team if the 5th team wins and they play them, they already had the virtue of a home field advantage, and now they're playing wherever. It could even be worse than you're playing a 12th team. That 12th team we were talking about earlier, it could have been...
It would be Texas a 1 seed versus a 1 seed versus a 6 or 7, right? Would be how it is?
I don't know. Well, whatever it happens to break out.
But regardless.
Regardless. So I don't know what it would be. I don't know if the one would play the 5-12 winner or play the 8-9 or whatever.
6-7, I think is how it would break out.
Okay.
Because 5 would play 12.
Wouldn't it be the 8? Wouldn't it be the 8-9?
8 and 9 would play each other?
8. So
5, 12, 6, 11,
7,
10,
8, 9.
My bad.
So anyway, regardless, it could be that you're playing a team that's in the 9th, 8th position, who is a Texas A&M playing in Houston. Maybe that's where the bowl game is.
Or Miami.
Yeah, Miami. And let's say you're Ohio State and you're coming down to play them. Miami. And you're like, wait a second. Well, yeah, we got the bye game, but this team, who's obviously everybody knows they're not as good as us, we got to go play them in their backyard.
Or it's deserving.
Yeah. It's deserving, yeah. And so combination, not as good, not as deserving, could be USC or or UCLA playing in the Rose Bowl. So I don't know about the home field. I kind of like the idea of a home field for both the first and the second round.
Well, that was not to get too off, but that's why Texas had it all in line for them this year.
Right.
I mean, Washington's a higher seed, better team. They have to go play Texas
in New Orleans. And then they go buy the venue in Houston for the championship. Yeah, so that I don't know.
Scenario. So Washington fans are probably irritated about it.
They went Texas on it. So I don't know. I think that it's I could see it not being a done deal, but then again, I think a lot of this is not a done deal. I think that we're still going to see reason for a super conference to emerge.
I mean, you can't not have the venues already in place, right?
No, yeah, you got to have all that set up, all that lined up.
Yeah, for literally years.
Right.
That's how they're scheduling it out now. Years down the line this is who's hosting in 2028 type of thing.
Yeah, and you're going to try to get. Unless it's NFL style.
You just keep playing at the higher seeds
place. And what's appealing to me about that is you're going to get a fun atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because if you're going
it's a guaranteed atmosphere.
And you're going to get attendance.
Yeah, you're going to get attendance. And attendance you want.
Yes.
You don't want to look at a game that's being played in Arizona and you've got two teams, maybe it's, I don't know, pick two teams that probably aren't going to travel really good. They could be there, whatever it is, you know. No one's going to travel really good to that second game when they potentially have two more games to go. As a fan, you're not going to go to that. So the second game is in the Fiesta Bowl, and you're playing Michigan versus Miami again. Let's talk about two teams from far away. There's nobody going to be there except for people in Phoenix who don't care.
And it'll rub a lot of people the wrong way, but it's like when you get to that type of format where it's home field advantage up until the actual national championship, just leave the bowl games for everybody else. Mm-hmm. It's, you know, it sucks. Like but
it puts teams in bigger bowls.
It does.
Would have been in.
And you can try, and you can
for fan bases that would be excited.
Well, and you make it NIT format, and you say like, you know, these are my new formatted New Year's Six bowls with the 13th best team in the nation and the 14th best team type of thing. So I want teams should get rewarded for making semifinals, and it's not. They should be rewarded with home field advantage, just like the NFL, in my opinion. You know,
I don't think
I don't want to go play a semifinal in Pasadena.
Honestly, though, I mean, what would the NFL attendance be if the Dallas Cowboys were playing the Philadelphia Eagles in Atlanta? Right? Like what?
It'd be poor.
Or in Vegas.
But, you know, it's like it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense, yeah.
And what's your reward for being the conference champion?
Well, that's the thing. It's lining the pockets of people who are on these bowl committees and who are running the bowls. And at some point, that has to exhaust itself.
Because you're going to have 110% attendance for home playoff games.
Oh,
I mean, it's going to be
amazing. Yeah. The atmosphere is going to be phenomenal.
Well, and for some of these stadiums, they'll be like, hey, like, let's accommodate. We know, like, for the Bamas and the Georgias of the world, it's like, we know we're going to be in the playoff. Let's make it a thing. Like this is going to be the experience you get if you come to Georgia for a playoff.
And to go win on the road anytime is super exciting as a fan. If you go win a road playoff game, I mean, the high would be just
absolutely. Yeah. So the other constituency that might be pushing hard for this, if they think about it, would be all the northern teams, especially Big Ten teams. The Northern Big Ten, not the USC.
Come play in the cold.
Because, not just that, they're never going to get to play in there's no games close there. Nowhere close. So this is their only chance to bring something close. And even if you said, okay, the weather might be bad, I mean, it's not going to be that bad, NFL plays and all this, but you could say we could play it in Indianapolis, we can do some other things, but
we have a designated site.
Sites or something, but
Detroit.
But otherwise, they're traveling a long distance. And if you're in Ohio State, or even worse in Michigan, and you're trying to go and play in these different places, well, you may be, I mean, even if you get the bye the first week, you may find yourself going to the Rose Bowl one week and then Miami the next week, and assuming you continue to win. That's going to be very difficult for your fan base and difficult for your players. That's a lot of travel for those players with just a week off in between. That's a big disadvantage.
It's pretty detrimental, yeah.
My idea would be to take if we have to satisfy, and I really don't care about them, but the bowl group themselves, but especially if there is actually a fan base on TV and everywhere that wants to see it, plus what you're saying, Jay, about getting excited as a school that's not usually in those type of bowls to be there. Let's create another 12 or 16 team playoff, whatever it has to be, that rotates through the other bowls. Mm-hmm. So if we have the home field that continues until the championship or the Final Four for the true champion, then it's the NIT format for everybody that's below that, and they're doing something else and they're rotating through those venues and they get to go to those places.
Yep.
That way everybody gets to continue to have this world they want to live in with these bowls and this weird legacy program that we've got. But we get something rational for the people that are actually pursuing a national championship.
Yeah. There's so many options out there. And again, it's going to boil down to what's going to cash in my bottom line, the highest. It'd be interesting to see. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
No,
the hard part, so the difference with the NFL format is they're not ranked. right? So it's just a straight up win loss
Right.
sets up who's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, wild card, etc. So in college football, you're going to have that bias of, okay, Georgia and Alabama are always 1 and 2. So whoever wins is going to have to go through Athens to get a national championship over and over and over again, right? So
only if they're that good.
I know, but
I
usually are.
I prefer that better to the NFL schedule. And the NFL, the downside to the NFL is that
You get 6 and 7 teams winning divisions who are
winning
in the playoffs.
divisions. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess, but
And you have a 6 and 7 division winner who is hosting against a 12 and 3 or a or whatever, a wild card team who has 4 more wins than them.
yeah, but for the most part, though, the 12 and 4 teams have the path, right? And
But the rankings for the most part, I mean, as subjective as everyone wants to make it sound like, it has proven to be relatively sound in terms of just where things end up landing, especially in a 12-team landscape. Like, you're going to see those 6 teams, those top 6 or 7, maybe not even that many. You're going to be like, yeah, obviously it's this. And other than that, it's like, all right, like everything else kind of shuffles around. As long as you get that top half right, I think it's gonna fall into place. The rankings,
I think you're exactly.
I think it's better. I think it's good, and it should be more obvious with this format.
I don't know. I think that you're right. If you get to a world where, and I think you're exactly right, Connor. But Jay, you have a point as well. When you talk about year in and year out, if you're always having to go through Tuscaloosa, or Athens, or Norman, or whatever, there gets to be some, I don't know, it wears on the sport a little bit. But it's hard to just, I don't know, what do you do about that?
Well, it's just like it's the same argument in a different standpoint where you're like, all right,
I guess
it's Bama or Georgia in the national title this year.
Right.
It's the same thing, and at some point,
People still watch.
at some point, the lake is going to turn over, and there's going to be new folks that come to the top.
Well, honestly, that's Georgia.
Yeah.
They weren't always there.
Right, and they haven't been. I mean, 2016 is when they really kind of started emerging, and given that's been 8 years ago, but who knows what's to say is going to come. Like, Michigan is a newcomer who's been around for a couple of years who is going to fall off, but at some point with these conferences and the way they're lining up, you have chances to get some other names in there, big names, but it's not going to be maybe your constant Georgia, Bama stuff every single year. You're going to have them, of course, every once in a while or consistently, but maybe not every year.
So do you guys think that the 12-team playoff, as it's structured right now, with this 5-7 rule and all that, what does it do for the athletic directors like Castiglione in particular, when they're thinking about how they're going to fill out their schedule? How should they strategically do that, knowing that they've got a couple of different bogeys? One is, all else equal, you want the easiest path for your team to win. And at the same time, you want the most attractive games you can possibly put together. And those two things conflict, obviously. What do you think it enables them to do? Or does it constrain them to do one thing or the other?
I think you have to, since schedules are already kind of locked in, I think you're going to have to just see how it affects the teams the next couple of years. Honestly. If Texas goes to Michigan and loses and finishes 9-3, but still makes the playoffs, well, that's not that big a deal to go to Michigan and lose. But if they go to Michigan and lose and finish 10-2 and then don't make the playoffs, well, then you're like, okay, well, that's obviously this is not. There's no reason to go play Michigan.
Right.
I wish we
see how it goes.
I wish we would kind of carve out instead of doing the beginning of the season, because, which again, like the Texas win against Bama went a long way last year, and obviously like Bama goes to the playoff and everything. But even when Bama was not looking great, like that was still something that Texas fans could latch on. It'd be fun to do some of these bigger non-con games, and again, it's a very probably hot take, but like doing them mid-year, like when OU goes and plays Notre Dame in November, That's a marquee matchup against two teams that have proved that they're good.
Yeah,
and they're playing at their highest level at that point. It's not these like
because even a lot of people were saying, well, Bama's different now.
They're figuring themselves out. They don't know who their quarterback is and all this stuff. Like, give me a powerful non-con game in week 8 and let me see these teams who have had the 7 weeks before to develop.
I think that's cool. I think that could be really good, but it could be high risk, high return.
Yeah,
and high risk that is low return. So
recency bias in terms of if you lose it as well.
Think about how many years that you had two teams that are big names that don't materialize.
Yeah.
In week 3, you don't know that. In week 7 or 8 or 9, you know that.
Sure.
And so the matchup doesn't become as important.
Yeah.
I mean, look at USC Notre Dame this past year. That was a very cool game for us to watch because it was Caleb Williams and USC getting blown up by Notre Dame. But both those teams were out of it at that point and clearly out of it. And it could have been one or the other that just was out of it. So I think that it kind of cuts both ways. I like the idea rather than playing Mercer in, week 11.
To your question, though, I mean, to what it does to ADs, like, you have to hope that even the subjectiveness that I mentioned earlier with the rankings itself, like, even if, I don't know, I mean, if you do take the easiest path, like right now, like as OU, all you need is the SEC. All you need is your SEC schedule and your resume with that. I don't need a win against Tulane. I don't need a win against Temple. I don't need a win against Maine, right? Like I can literally live off of those games.
Well, and those are, especially the Maine, those are assumed wins.
Right.
So you're not scheduling somebody 8 years out that you have no idea if they happen to be good, like in Oklahoma State. Like 8 years out, who knows what Oklahoma State's going to be? And odds are they're going to be better than you expect, and much better than any notoriety they carry.
I think you make it a point to go and you schedule. You go and you look and you say, who are the 12 teams this year? Who do you think the 12 teams are going to be? Let's pick a name, and we're not going to try to schedule anybody outside of these 12 to 20 teams that we think are contenders, because if it's between an Oklahoma and a Florida to get in the playoff with the same record, and Oklahoma has a win over an Oregon who's pushing for a playoff, and Florida has a win over an Iowa who is 9-3 at the end of the year and not really anywhere to be found in that race, then yeah, go schedule those games. I think there's incentive to do it.
See, I think there's incentive to do it too, and that maybe just my hope because I want to see those big matchups. I could definitely see the idea of the path of least resistance of let's schedule Maine 3 times, and then we'll play our SEC schedule. But one,
you're banking on all the wins.
You're banking on and you're looking at it from no quality losses, and you're looking at it from the standpoint of the fans are going to say you're ignoring your fans who are going to say this is crap. Yeah. We need to have some reason to come to the game.
Ultimately they'd have to get 4 conferences with the same amount of teams in order to have like a crossover setup, right? But because I do think it would be...
You don't think they could do it with 2?
Yeah, or any even number with the same amount of teams. Okay. But I think if you had an SEC Big 12, like next year was the year that the SEC and Big 12 played, and the Big 10 and the ACC played.
So what they do, all those they do in basketball,
right? Like basketball,
what they do in basketball,
right? If you could get something like that for football, I do think it's important because there's no other way to judge a conference other than what we get to judge it off of,
right?
Is non-con,
for sure,
because you can't say 9-3 in the SEC is any better if the SEC teams aren't playing other teams around the country.
Exactly.
So there's no way to gauge it.
Are just horrible.
Yeah, so there's no way to gauge it.
Well, I look at it.
Ultimately, that would be, for me, as a college football fan, the best part is if you played 4 teams, your lower 4 from however the rankings ended last year played their lower 4 and so forth and so forth. That would be awesome.
I think that'd be really cool. I don't know if they'll ever go to something that's that dynamic. Now they schedule, years and years and decades in advance. I could see it being very barbelled, and here's my again, back to my optimism of how I'd like to see it done, I'd like to see us play. I actually think it'll get evolved to super conferences, and we'll actually cut the bottom third to bottom half of the current Division I FBS group out. But until we get to that point, where then you can really, the schedules are going to be amazing. Every game is going to be amazing like the NFL. But until you get to that point, I think you've got to kind of barbell it, and you either play someone who's absolutely an automatic win, or you play somebody who is a big-time, not just notoriety, it is obviously a matchup that's going to be one of the best games on TV that week. That way, you get two avenues to get into the playoffs. One is you're good enough in your conference, plus your non-conference record gets you in. Or you lose those non-conference games and you get a lot of credit for losing to very good teams, and you did really well in your conference. And so either way, a team like OU in a tough conference like the SEC has a couple of avenues to get in. If you were in one of the lesser conferences, that becomes difficult. I don't know. Because if you're, back to using OSU as an example, if you're trying to get into the playoffs, I don't know if you can afford to play very good teams.
No, you need as many wins as you
need all the wins, because you don't know for sure. You don't want to be in a position where you have to win your conference.
Your leverage is a lot lower.
Be the team who can maybe get in and lose the conference title game and still get in or something, which would be possible but odd, but still possible if you're a 12-1, even though 3 or 4 of those games were against nobodies. So I think that it's going to be really interesting. I think you're right, Jay. It's going to probably play out where we see how it plays out. It's going to turn on some just random wins and losses. I see a lot of ADs looking at whatever the example team is that got in or didn't get in and saying we are emulating that or we are avoiding that. And that could be just what happened to happen that one week, that one time. And it's not a great sample, but they're going to use it as their example of what they do going forward. That's the template. So I hope it's good. As a college football fan, I hope it's.
I mean, I don't know why why these have to be scheduled so many years.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I don't think the original reason for that.
I don't think it's difficult.
Why was it?
It's got to just be money, right?
I think
in 2012 we knew that in 2022 we were going here, in 2024 we were going.
But there's probably a reason you haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, obviously with realignment and everything else, but we haven't seen an announcement of OU playing anybody in 2 years.
That's true.
Like our last big announcement was Clemson, and that was, I mean, quite literally 2 or 3 years ago.
And that's 2030 or something.
Yeah,
2031.
So I mean. I think the days of seeing these far out in advance because of exactly what we're talking about
maybe so
is
because we've lost a bunch of games too. We've lost
Georgia,
the Georgia series, Tennessee. The LSU series, the Tennessee series. Yeah, it's 3 series right there that we've lost.
And in the
back half of this decade,
in years past, losing that would mean you'd have to go out and go find
a big market.
Want to replace it with somebody. You wouldn't want to wait around,
right?
But that's good.
Well, they don't know if they're going to have how many?
It's going to be super conferences by then anyway, probably.
Could be. And you don't want to schedule. You don't want to lock somebody up who's not in one of the super conferences.
Exactly.
You don't want
because it doesn't matter.
Or you have to buy them out.
Yeah,
or you risk a lot, or you lock someone up who's a good team that's not in a super conference, and you risk losing the game.
Yeah, a lot of
lock up OSU.
A lot of costs.
If we had Washington State or Oregon State on the schedule at this point, you're like, oh crap! Now we've got essentially a Division II team lined up.
Yeah. Which they're playing Mountain West this year, is that right?
I think that's right.
Yeah, I think. Well, they're doing like
all the money.
They're playing like 5 or 6
in the automatic bid.
Yeah,
and they're still.
Do they get that as their schedule?
No, I don't think they did.
There's no way.
I don't think they. I think they negotiated that out of that deal. That would have been ridiculous.
No, I don't know. None of us really care, but this puts Notre Dame in a pickle.
It definitely does. It more and more as every.
Which is deserving.
Thing happens. Is
join a conference.
Exactly.
They're going to have to join.
They are. They're going to have to.
They're going to have to.
They literally have their pick of conference.
And what's funny is
anybody would take them.
They're going to have to show up to the Big Ten's doorstep and
because this automatically makes Notre Dame have to win 4 games, right? Or 3.
What do you mean?
to win a national title.
Oh yeah, because they're never going to
Because they're not going to get a bye.
They'll never get the bye.
Yeah.
they'll never get the
Now they're not automatic qualifiers.
There's no way. There's just, I guess if they were, yeah, they would.
No, because you have to be a conference champion.
Conference champion.
You have to be a conference champion.
So yeah, you
have to be a conference champion to get a bye.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you would,
Yeah, so no,
if you just do, even if they are 75% likely to win that first game, 80% likely to win the first playoff,
They still have to play.
enormous assumption. What a hit to their chances of winning a title. They've got to join a conference. They absolutely have to join a conference.
Well, yeah, and if they don't see that, and that's what's crazy. I mean, it's clear to us where this is moving towards, and the landscape that we're headed towards.
What is so wrong with teams? Like, just play football only. Like, leave everything else.
Yeah, they've already done that.
I don't.
They've already done that.
They've
though.
already done
Their basketball,
Yeah,
football,
it's
East
everything in the
Conference,
Big
everything.
East. Yeah,
It just makes no sense to not. It just seems so easy.
they're greedy.
It's NBC.
I think they're greedy, and I think it's Notre Dame. I think they're
Well, it's Notre Dame, yeah.
they're arrogant and greedy about it, and they won't want to wake up to the real world of where it is, and I don't know. They're asleep at the wheel here. They like Lucas said, they have their pick right now, but if they wait long enough, there's a chance they're not included. If they go several years with not being in it, and things change, there may not be room for them. I know they've got a great fan base, but there's a lot of big fan bases out there. There'll
be some massive turmoil.
But more likely, they don't get to be a chooser. They have to be a beggar, and they get maybe the second of what they want in terms of their.
They already do that with their offerings plates.
Yeah, well, I tell you one thing that was funny. I don't think we talked about it yet, but I just realized for the first time that Nick Saban is a devout Catholic. I didn't know that. He goes to mass before games.
Yeah,
went before games. How did Notre Dame miss that? Wow, can you imagine Nick Saban in South Bend?
I mean, they did hire a guy.
That was
marbles.
I mean, he would. I don't know that he would have done it well because of the academic issues.
He might. Yeah, no, I think there's a good
it's tougher
reason
to
believe
get kids to
he wouldn't
go
have
there.
done as well just because of regression to the mean.
He would have had a
And
really,
he wouldn't have been recruiting from the hotbed of.
but he would have had a really, really strong influence on Ohio
He
and
would have had
Pennsylvania.
a
In Pennsylvania,
Yeah, it
like
would have
those Northeast kids.
devastated
I mean,
Ohio
the
State.
Northeast would have been really, really, really crazy.
Yeah, but the academic requirements are harder there than a lot of those schools that they compete against.
Yeah, I don't know if they're any harder than Ohio State though. I don't.
And they already get good athletes. Like I mean, it's not like Notre Dame's a
Right.
Yeah, but Brian.
Do they though? In the
Brian
last
Kelly-
20 years, have they?
Brian Kelly
I don't
just left.
They
Notre
played
Dame
2 national championships,
to go to LSU.
1 national championship.
Tells you a little bit more about Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I don't
They
know.
never made they made a couple playoffs.
Yeah, they did make a couple.
One
Two?
playoff.
Who?
Notre Dame?
Two.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has been pummeled.
I don't think they've made more than one playoff. have
Two
they?
playoffs. Yep. They got
I don't know if they
drilled by
scored.
Alabama. And
Have they
got,
scored in the playoffs?
Beat by Clemson.
beat by Clemson. I think.
I don't know if they scored.
I think
I'm not sure they scored in the playoffs.
I think they scored a touchdown.
I think they did, yeah.
if so, it was barely. No, then they scored like the opening touchdown, and then they didn't score thereafter or something. I
Against
don't
Clemson, I think. Yeah, I don't know.
know. Yeah.
Regardless, I'm not saying they've had this just immaculate run of success, but it's Notre Dame.
I've always said that they are skirting and risking just going down to a lower tier and never recovering. And I think they've been lucky with those 2 playoff appearances, and so many things have broken their way. It didn't have to be that way, and it still wasn't great. I don't think you could interview the average Notre Dame fan and say, yeah, we've accomplished all our goals, because their goals would have to be win national titles. What else, and all the other acclaim, they don't get conference titles. We hang our hat on conference titles that we haven't won a national title in forever. They don't even have that.
No,
So
they don't. I guess the next best thing is just an appearance.
their dysfunction, I don't know. It could just continue for a while, but they need to get on board, or they're going to be at kind of the back of the bus type of situation.
It's getting there.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We'll see. We got the rumors and talk about a 14-team playoff structure and extra bye games for the 2 super conferences to be the SEC and the Big Ten. It's definitely a moving target. A lot of things evolving here. if OU plays their cards right, they need to be thinking about how they're always going to be positioned. I guess that's the other aspect of why you might play an easy schedule is if you're in the playoff every year, it's kind of like, well, we're just warming up until we get into the playoff, and we want to be healthy for the playoffs. And so we don't want to go through 12 rigorous, crazy games to then have a conference title to then have playoff games to play in. I don't know. So
I haven't heard anyone talk about this at all, but with the addition of how many games teams might play now, I'm surprised that the scholarship limit has stayed at 85.
That's interesting. Thinking it needs to go up, so that we get for health, for safety, for player safety. Yeah.
I mean, you're playing a lot more games than you played 15 years ago,
right? Oh, yeah.
And then the scholarship numbers haven't changed.
That's a great point. That's very interesting.
And I've heard no one talk about it.
No one ever talks about that.
Now teams are skirting around it with preferred walk-ons, where you have legit 3-star players / 4-star players as your walk-ons. But they're doing that out of just because we can now with NIL stuff.
And the roster's still not that big,
In general, I mean, you have 16, 17, 18 game seasons. I mean.
Well, yeah, look back as far as 2000 and OU wins 13, and that was a big number. And then it was not too long before that 12 was the number. And so, and that was still in the 85 era. And so now we are looking at where not just one or two teams are going to play that many games, but now with a playoff like this, you're talking about quite a few teams that are going to play at least 13 games, 14 games, 15 games. That's an interesting point. Super conferences could bring that about too. They could say, you know what, we're going to up that to 95. And
so, I mean, what is it? What's that? You'll have the lower teams that are probably have a problem with it, right? Like that don't have all the money, or we can't afford 5 more scholarships.
The 9 through 12 seeds or something like that.
No, I mean like the,
just
group of 5,
Texas Techs of the world, whoever.
Right.
There's someone like, well, we can't afford 10 more scholarship players, which
they could definitely afford 10 more.
But you know what I'm saying, though.
They're
what they'll
afraid
come
it's
up
going to be
with.
taken away from them. But
or
that's going to happen.
They're just going to be afraid that. Texas Tech can have 10 more players, which is great, but they're not going to be 10 more good players.
Right.
Alabama's OU's are going to get just even more high-end talent, right? You're going to stockpile.
Which is probably going to happen either way. That was always the argument about why to go to 85, but those of us like myself who understand cartel theory knew that it was actually the Ohio States and the Alabamas of the world that wanted the 85 limit because they knew they could get the top 85 and it would hurt a team that was trying to emerge and trying to build a roster who could never get there. Now you get the flip problem of they could use it to their advantage. You get 2 super conferences and say, we're going to absorb all the and they should absorb all of the quality athletes in those. Mm-hmm. There shouldn't be anybody that goes to Texas Tech in that world if the SEC and the Big Ten are the 2 of the super conferences. That's a detriment to that player, and that's a detriment to the sport. You don't want to see a guy who could win the Heisman Trophy playing in Division II. That doesn't make any sense. And so, we probably should, and for player safety, have more people on the roster.
Did anybody catch what Chris Del Conte said the other day about next season being an 8-game conference schedule for the SEC? Because, Sankey originally said the first year they're doing 8 games, and they were going to talk about doing a 9th, but they hadn't decided. And this was a 1-year trial period, essentially. But Chris Del Conte, the Texas athletic director, in an interview said the other day that next season was going to be an 8-game also. And it sounded like it had more to do with ESPN not wanting to put more money towards next season for the SEC coverage. So that would be the big reason to not add a 9th game because they wouldn't be getting paid anything extra for it. But it would make more sense to me to do it on a 2-year basis because then you flip the schedules.
Right.
As opposed to do it 8 this year and then go into a permanent 9 next season. You can just do 8 this year, 8 next year, and you flip everybody's schedule so you get to see every team over that 2-year period.
Yeah, that does make sense. That makes a lot of sense. What would you guys prefer kind of at first glance, a 9 or an 8?
I like the 9 without the given late season cupcake for everybody. I like it. I mean,
Is it take place? Or does that stay and you lose quality non-con?
Yeah, or that. I mean, I like that. I think it just further validates the league. I mean, in terms of who you have as your front runners, right? Like, let me go
the other side of that.
Yeah,
because if your conference isn't really playing anybody but middle of the road teams from other conferences, then whoop-de-doo, you won 8 games in your conference. I have nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, and that's true, but the SEC's been doing that, and they've been succeeding with it even still. So I don't think it matters. I do think that, I don't know, I like the 9, but I could see it working either way in terms of either you're respected or you're not respected, and it doesn't really matter if you've got the track record to show it. If you play 9, you say we played 9 SEC games, then it really hinges on how much respect the SEC has.
Especially for the teams that make the
respect. Yeah. It's probably going to be really good for them. You could then open it up to play either cupcakes or really good teams either way. I don't want to see it replace the good non-conference game.
For me, though, I want each season to be its complete own season. I don't want any reputation from the year before or the decade before to influence the seedings or where everyone's
brain perception.
Yeah. I want on the field, but I'm not on the field.
It's going to happen.
But it is because, I mean, it's, those have existed.
Well, if you're going with that, going into this season, people should have no respect for OU going into this last season we just played because we went 6 and 7 the year before. So at that point, you're like, why would anybody have any respect for OU in a crappy down conference such as the Big 12 going into this last season we just played?
I don't know. I think it's important for leagues to play other leagues in good games, big games. I think whether it's correct to draw a comparison or not from Texas going and beating Michigan this next year or not, I think it's important that those games have to be played because you have to base it off of something.
Yeah, I mean, that's desirable.
If you just, because even for OU, I'll even say OU this next year, we don't play anyone very good at non-con.
Right.
Houston's okay.
Right.
Tulane's okay.
Right.
You can't really gauge anything from that.
Right.
Now, if we win a bunch of SEC games, we're going to pump our chest, but you don't really know how good you are, especially if the teams that you beat up didn't play anybody either.
Well, I would argue though in that case, like, so what? Arkansas plays Iowa. That doesn't tell anybody anything. But if you're looking within the conference and you say, if with a 9-game schedule, you're not going to have this world where I'm going to invent one. I don't know if this is what it is, but who has not played each other in forever? Alabama, Georgia, all these
regular season
matchups that never happen. Like at some point that should diminish your standing as a conference. But if you have a 9-game schedule, that's going to make it where that's not possible. You're always going to rotate through and play everybody.
And you can get an opportunity to go play we could go be playing a Florida team this year that we're not playing in a 9th game as opposed to, I don't have to use Maine as an example, but like as a Tulane, yeah, Well,
I guess my argument isn't so much against the 8 or 9 as much as it is whatever your non-con is, I hope people still play legitimate quality non-con.
Yeah.
I do too.
Which is why I would say
I hope the 9th game doesn't replace the one good.
Yeah, you replace the
non-con
cupcake. I think you should replace the cupcake. And that one, replacing one cupcake leaves 2 cupcakes, and you should be playing a
and even just as a fan,
decent
just to have banter,
just like what we said earlier,
or whatever. Our conference is better than you. You got to have a way to compare it. Like,
yeah, that's exactly my thinking.
You have to bag on the Big Ten somehow, right?
You have to be enjoyable
to win.
I mean, how enjoyable is it? I mean, we've suffered through years of, as ticket holders, when we had extra tickets, trying to sell the extra ticket when you're playing nobody state on the non-conference schedule, much less your conference schedule sucks. You've got to have some big name matchups, or it's just not interesting to fans, and no one's coming to not only is no one coming to watch it, no one's watching it on TV.
Right.
You're just
no one cares.
Afterthought. Yeah.
And you don't get the respect even if you play well in those games and you look good. We've experienced it. There's no respect given.
If you did get a Super League with just the 2 conferences, let's say a 20-team Big Ten and a 20-team SEC, let's say, would you rotate your out of conference like they're still their own conferences, but they're in a Super League. Would you have a rotation of a 20-year rotation where you see every one of those teams?
Oh, I'd love that.
Once over a 20-year period.
I'd love that, but then again, it'd kind of be nice to not necessarily see them all. Like, I don't really care if we ever play Maryland.
No, but Maryland might not be in the Super League.
Okay, well,
right.
Okay, yeah. So if it's truly 20 and 20, yeah, that would be pretty cool.
But in that scenario, you would, if you kept it to 8 in your league, you would play 4 out of conference. So you'd play 4 Big Ten games.
That's what I was going to say. If you
you would play them
every 4 years or every 5 years.
Every 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You just rotate.
Yeah.
If it's a Super League format, then yeah, you pick 4 teams from the opposite conference. They pick 4 teams from your conference, and it's
every 5 years.
It's interleague play for college football.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
That'd be cool.
Awesome.
At that point, just
because in over 10 years period,
format.
You're going to Michigan.
Yeah.
And Michigan's coming here. You're going to Ohio State. Ohio State's coming.
And you might actually take 10 years to do it because you might do the home and home.
Right.
And so you actually don't, you keep the same 4 for 2 years and then the next 4 for the 2. Yeah. That'd be
kind of like the old Big 12 North and South. You could do it that way if you wanted to.
That would be pretty good.
Do a home and home back-to-back seasons.
That'd be pretty
You
special.
see them for 5 years.
That'd be awesome.
It'd be incredible.
That'd be very incredible.
I would.
Now
can we pitch that to the Saudis?
we got to get the Saudis involved. They're gonna have to buy out Vanderbilt and a few other teams in the Big Ten and get them out of
Maryland and Rutgers,
Northwest,
Illinois, and
that's Northwest.
Let these people know that they're just not that good at football. Hey, it should be. Hey, we could get into relegation and the whole bit. We could get there, but no, that's a neat concept. Let's touch on a couple other things before we sign off. So I guess Todd Bates is getting a raise.
A deserved raise, yeah. I would think. Yeah, I didn't see the actual numbers.
Didn't everybody get a raise? Didn't everybody?
Yeah, but I think he's getting an additional one.
Yeah,
because he's trying to get poached.
Yeah, he's getting a little something.
Yeah, I think it was like 900,000 or something like that per year.
It's kind of interesting to see how this has played out with the coaches that have left, that have been allowed to leave, if you will, encouraged to leave, whatever it is, and so then you've got these other coaches that we're obviously protecting a lot. The new coaches coming on. We got Zach as defensive coordinator or whatever he's going to be. It's kind of interesting. They're kind of coming into their own. He's definitely making it his own coaching staff. BV is. So a little bit of injury news. So Lacey is going to have to hang it up. He's not.
Jacob Lacey hanging it up. Yeah, it's
sad. That's
a
unfortunate.
Sad thing, and it's not just sad because it's sad for him and his health, but he was going to start. He was going to be one of our starting interior defensive linemen.
So sorry for him. That's awful.
But yeah, it sucks. But
it's really bad.
Wishing him all the best.
Seems like they have his lot here.
Yeah. So we've got I don't know. It's kind of the don't hear anything, don't know anything, and then you hear these little injury news. It's nobody's reporting. I guess there was a little bit of how much some guys are lifting weights and stuff. So you get that. But otherwise, it's just like this guy's going to miss spring. This guy's going to.
Yeah, you got Gentry. You got Gentry missing spring. Looks like Desan had a knee scope. He'll be back for spring practice, and then there was one more, right?
Yeah.
Or no, I guess we were just talking about Harrington and not getting
Harrington.
cleared.
We didn't. Yeah, Harrington.
Not getting officially cleared by the NCAA yet to come back.
Yeah,
sounds like it's imminent.
I mean, surely it's imminent.
Yeah,
it just seems
team seems to think it's imminent.
Why don't they just what does it take? Just come on,
just do it.
Just do your thing.
Do the paperwork. It's paperwork. That's all it is.
It's very frustrating.
I mean, at this point, you just play him and expect the NCAA to not do anything at that point.
I would.
May not be around by the time the season ends.
Yeah, they may not exist.
They may even have less power than they already do.
That entity may be dissolved. Yeah, exactly. That could be. You just need to ask Sankey what he thinks. He's the power broker.
Got a special teams coach.
Yeah,
from San Diego State.
That's right. That's very positive.
Ranked top 10 in the nation in 3 years in a row.
That's pretty awesome. So that's
we freaking need it.
Yes, we do. We need it.
Maybe
we just need somebody with a brain.
If you can coach up Farouk to not fumble the ball in kickoffs, that'd be cool.
Yeah, just when to run, when not to run, how to. I mean, just basic strategic stuff. You don't.
Gavin Freeman, teach him how to wave his arm.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, and maybe not even put him back there.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I hope not.
I don't know if he'll be back there.
I mean, I'm thinking after
I don't know if
we
you
saw
afford
last
it.
season. If Venables is like, hey, like, did we waste a scholarship? Might have wasted a scholarship.
I don't know if he's that bad. I just don't know if
He's not very good.
I just don't know if you want him
From what we saw.
kicks.
Well, he may be able to utilize him, but he's definitely not that guy in a punt return situation that is, it doesn't seem. I mean, two things can happen here with this new coach. He either can scheme up blocking and returns in a way that opens our eyes and go, wow, look at Gavin Freeman go. Or two, he realizes, and he's not going to just make a decision in August and stick with it all the way through December, that this guy isn't the guy. He's not going to be in this position, and he'll make a decision to move a guy and replace him, even if he replaces him with someone who he replaces again in October, to realize the decisions you make in August and a guy that looks really good in fall camp may not necessarily be your best punt returner.
Yeah, that was the strangest part of it last year. I mean, once you muff it a couple of times, you just have to put somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, maybe they're so bad in practice, they're just like...
But we knew Drake Stoops wasn't, though. He could have...
Yeah, just catch the ball.
Just catch the ball.
Yeah, even if it's just catching the ball.
And if
Like, even it's like you're not going to
What's
run
what I hate about Lincoln Riley, because Lincoln Riley was like, just catch the ball. Yeah.
Right. But and if it's not that, one, it could just be a catch the ball guy that you don't even expect to run. Or it could be, well, why don't we just rush 11?
Why don't we block?
Why are we even putting a guy back there?
Did we block
I mean,
punts last year?
A
Yeah.
couple.
Block too, Peyton Bowen. That's my
Yeah,
first
Bowen,
suggestion,
right.
is put Peyton Bowen permanently on the punt block team.
Yeah. I mean, it's
But he could also be a punt returner.
if you're rushing 11, I know
I don't want him punt return.
I know you're going to give up yardage a lot, but then again, they're not going to get a very quality punt off.
Right.
You're going to
Well, they're not getting the ball back.
that are stupid.
That's number one. They're not going to get the ball back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not going to fumble it.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have it bounce into you in some weird, like in the Super Bowl
all the time.
So
Still the second dumbest rule in sports.
Do you get a team that if that's the case of where you never put anybody back, you always rush 11, that you just get that rugby style kicker that he just kicks it just over the defensive line and it just tries to roll it as far as he can?
Right.
well, probably, but how far could he necessarily get it different than what they're doing anyway? I'm not saying it's necessarily a strategy I want to employ. It is not like I wanted.
I mean, if you're
a lot
you're
of
20,
hitting
you could kick it to the other 20.
There'd be a lot of hitting yardage lost.
But they're kicking it that far anyway, for the most part.
I don't think you could not have a return.
I definitely think it's probably something that if it was used would pretty quickly be like, why have we not been? Why have other teams not been doing this? I mean,
It might work.
like I think people can scheme for it, like punters and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But like for the first while that it's out, it's like a new offensive
This is like a
package that
wildcat.
someone's running. Like, oh my gosh, like what is this? And people are just punting the ball, and you get punts that bounce backwards.
Well, think
you
about
get all this
changed
stuff that
punt
happens.
protection. Like everybody uses that same punt protection now that they didn't used to.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wildcat became big for a while until they figured out how to stop it.
Yeah, if
Well,
you
here's
put
what would
7
happen.
skill guys out there and a couple big guys, like
Well, it depends on who you're going against, too. Because if you're going against, again, someone who's a really good special teams coach or just a really good coaching staff, they're going to say, hey, listen, kick the ball. Because everybody else is going to take their requisite 3 steps, and it's going to get blocked every single time.
Or you just start faking it because you're coming every time.
Yeah, and then they don't know what to do, and
Yeah.
and they don't get a quality punt off because they're just catch kick. So
No, I'm saying that they start faking the punts.
then
Because you're blitzing
you just go and
everybody.
protect. I'm not saying you rush 11.
Right.
I'm saying you have 11 on the line.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely don't expose yourself to.
Yeah.
But then
Just
again,
over the
you're
top.
not relying on the punt returner to stop someone who is faking a punt.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's not something I'm advocating. The way I am advocating,
You just get someone that can catch it and return it.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Out of the 100 guys on
I
the
like
team,
that a lot.
you have 100 of the best players in the country, and just find one that can
I'm with you.
catch the football.
Well, I was trying to say I'm not going to advocate for it the way I am going to advocate for. I like the idea you always onside kick. And that's a conversation for another off-season pod, but that is a scheme that Lucas and I came up with that I think is actually something that could be killer in this game if we'd actually figure out how to use it. But anything else to cover before we sign off?
I'll go on the fourth down pooch kid punt is I don't know.
Superpower.
I don't know why you would never. I don't know why you do it every time.
Well, we
Yeah.
saw it.
Jackson did it, right?
Yeah, but I don't every time.
Gabriel did it.
Gabriel
Like-
did it. Gabriel did it.
Line up, see what their scheme is. You have an option A, we're going to run the play. B, we're going to.
I mean, from the 50 on, absolutely leave your quarterback out there and just pooch it. There's no reason not to.
Yeah.
Well, especially when you see punters
And if they start
kicking it in the end zone, and
if they start putting a safety like extra deep so that he's kind of a tweener, or we're just going for it then.
Exactly. That's the read.
Yeah, it just makes
go out there and read it.
Too much sense to not.
I love it. I love that idea. That's another. We'll have to do a whole pod on
hot takes
that we think
hot take schemes.
Hot take schemes. I like that. All right.
Obligatory. Man, we're lucky. Jet Levy's gone. Good season.
We're lucky for that. Unlucky for Toby Keith. Rest his family, rest his peace, and I don't know if there's anything else to cover. And
we covered our Bedlam Saturday last week. We had women kick the crap.
Yeah,
in basketball out of OSU.
Mm-hmm.
Men had the final shot to win the game, beat OSU. Hockey team beat OSU.
Nice.
I didn't know that. That's
it was just a full on Bedlam ass whooping day.
Shout out women's basketball winning the Big 12 title
second year
against the great Texas women's basketball team.
That's awesome.
Another late winner.
I think.
So
beautiful. That's awesome to see. Love it. Softball's rolling.
New stadium opens tomorrow.
Yeah,
right.
Even though they said there's not going to have, it's not ready, but they're still going to play.
It does not look.
We're going to have to take BP at the old stadium.
Yeah, it does not look.
Shuttle
ready.
them over to the new stadium. That's going to be an event. They said it's going to be like middle of April before it's like full on ready.
That's just crazy.
But it'll be hyped tomorrow. There'll be a bunch of people down there.
Oh, it'll be
Scoreboard looks sick.
Scoreboard's awesome.
Oklahoma shaped scoreboard
with the score line in the panhandle. That'll be pretty cool. Box score.
Cool.
So good stuff.
Yeah, very
we'll
good
be back.
stuff.
We'll be back soon.
Yep, we'll be back soon, a couple of weeks, and before we know it, spring ball will have started, and we'll be deep.
We're like a month out from the spring game. A month and a week out from the month and 2 weeks. April 20th.
April 20th.
Okay,
yeah.
so a month and 3 weeks.
It's a bad day for a spring game.
Bad day.
Yep.
Why?
It's a record store day.
What day?
Record store day.
420.
Still do that?
It's gonna be depending on
420 is another type of day that I'm familiar with. So that stadium's gonna be lit.
It's gonna be jamming.
Jamming, man.
Well, until then, Boomer.
See you later.